T black jewelry. I know I stand out, I don't need to try for it. I jack the limelight if you don't think ahead quick. I tell them catch me if you can, I'm some gingerbread. Oh, I never ride solo. It's me and my chick looking like slow-mo.
Hey guys, what's going on down here from Tampa in the wonderful weather? And I got Sara Quiriconi on. She's up in California. Sara, I know you guys are dealing with the fires and a lot of stuff's going on in your world. And you guys have had COVID, then you have the strikes, and then you had rainstorms for a minute, and then you're talking about the homeless, and then next thing you know, you guys are dealing with fires. How are you doing?
My word is believe in words and grateful. Every moment I am grateful. Thank you for having me here. I am grateful for this opportunity to be in a position that I can do this, that I am safe. And my heart goes out to everyone who is currently still struggling or in the mix or in the literally the fire's way, because I cannot imagine what it's like to lose everything, and then not
Yeah.
knowing what to do. So on a heartfelt note, just knowing what is going on, and being grateful for all that I do have, especially what really matters most, because I know a lot of the actors who are up on stage recently have spoken to this, accepting awards and such, but we can get so caught up in the award or the achievement or the agent or how are we looking or what are the
Right.
numbers. And at the end of the day, what really, really matters, are we safe? Are we healthy? Are we creating, living out our passions? How do we feel waking up in the morning? And all of those matriculating together, that creates a big, powerful shift in energy. So gratitude and belief that we can create a different way are my words. I started with one word, but then I just added another one in there because I had the space. So
Take it where you can get it. Yeah, I talked to my uncle this morning, and he's one of the ones that lost everything. And but the one thing he said, he had his health, he had his family, and like I always tell him, that we can, in our Western society, and with me having a little bit of history, Western society, we have a tendency to put materialistic items so ahead of the things that matter the most. And I sadly to say this is that sometimes tragedy, because I live here in Florida, so we have hurricanes all the time. It
I
kind of
get it.
walks us, yeah, it kind of walks us back to reality, what's really important. And I really do appreciate you coming on. But before I get any deeper, I got to talk trash real quick because I saw you had an Ohio State hat on, and you're not even from Ohio, right? Are you from Ohio?
No, my
All right,
husband's
let's
from
get to
Ohio. That
okay.
was
So
for,
you're
so the funny
bandwagon, okay?
thing, yeah, that was for an audition. They were like, we want a college football. And I was like, taking his hat. Okay. And I put it on there. Then he loved it so much. I mean, if you're from Ohio, it's like, and you are just like, it's
Die
from what
hard,
I've heard.
the
I mean,
Ohio
they'll
State
line the
Buckeyes.
streets. So long story short, yes, long story short, it is not a personal thing. However, it is a household collective, that I was represent, and it was for an audition. So
Okay, I'll give you that one because the game's
we're
tonight.
big Miami Heat fans. We can put it that
Okay.
way.
All right, so I'll give you Miami Heat. Now, where are you originally from? Are you from Miami or where are you from originally?
Ready for this one? It's a mouthful. From Connecticut, lived in Boston, moved to
Okay.
Miami, traveled all around the world, went head deep into I'm going to do acting. Where else is the better place to go than Hollywood? And that's where I ended up now in LA. So I have my Florida roots as well. I was there for 8 years before moving here out to LA.
Okay, I can give you that one. I can give you even down in Miami. Yeah, my daughter lives in Fort Lauderdale. It's all good. All right, so you were just talking about how you got. So did you go to college?
I did in Boston,
Okay.
twice, and a little bit of schooling in, Connecticut as well. So I started out at Northeastern University, ended up leaving, going back to Connecticut. That's where I was diagnosed. I'm a 21-year cancer survivor.
Oh,
Thriver.
congratulations.
Thank you. And I was going through cancer treatment then. And after that, while I was going through cancer, actually, I still went to school and did some part-time classes at Fairfield U, which was
Wow.
it's in Connecticut. And later, like I wanted to do this university thing. I loved Boston. And so I went back to
Okay, cool.
Boston. That's where I finished my, undergrad degree in communications journalism and then also minored in graphic design. Loved art. Now, here's the interesting part, because what we originally do as children, a lot of
Right.
naturally, and that we're inclined to, is probably what our calling is at the end of the day. So when I was younger, I
True.
was always playing dress up, always developing characters. Took like sets, and it would just be like rocks in the backyard and be like, oh, that's the kitchen. We're going to pretend over here. And that's the living space. Here's the front door. My poor mother, I would over and over make her, this has nothing to do with your question about school, but I'm still going there over and over.
I love it.
The shoe on. Mommy, you got to put the shoe back on. Okay, we have to do it again. I mean, I was doing takes and directing myself at the age of 2. And when I was in college, I took any extracurricular classes. I'm like, I'm doing photography. I'm going to do acting classes. I did theater, like all this different movement work. And I knew I didn't want to be the businessy type. So I was like,
Right.
I'll make a deal. It was like an internal deal because they had like the societal of need to find a job. And then the inner me who's like,
Oh,
be an
yeah.
artist.
Yeah.
So I ended up in advertising as an art director, which
How
was
long did that
great. It was
last?
really up until the market crashed in 2009. And then I was
Okay. All
laid
right.
off. So the universe made a decision for me. And that's when a little bit of a bumpy road there, but then I got into yoga, which healed a lot of my internal conflict. I was even through cancer and before that, I still struggle a lot with substances, alcohol, eating
Sure.
disorders. I was very, very low self-esteem, a lot of inner conflict, and how that led me on a different path that I then started to heal and mend together through yoga. And
Oh, wow.
I hate, and if anybody out there is just like, I tried yoga, I hate it. I'm like, I'm with you.
I I
I'm
did.
so
Oh,
with
I look,
you.
I started it like
This is there.
oh, I tried it like 2 years ago. I started going, look, I'm not flexible, but let's keep going.
Nobody's flex. That's the whole point, though. It's just like meditation. Everybody's like, "Oh, I suck at meditation." It's like, well, good. That is the whole point. If you're not flexible, then even more reason to do it. But here nor there, I hated yoga when I first started. I was like, it is not burning calories. This is boring as ever, and I hate this. And we were doing the same thing over and over
Over and
again.
over.
It was an Ashtanga class, which I didn't know there was different styles. And so, anyway, later, probably 2 years later, and I took another class with a teacher that I ended up like, this is different. Oh, I like this. What is this? And it was more of like a flow style. And
Okay,
that's where I
yeah.
started to do a lot more inner work through the physical practice. And that led me on the path of a lot of healing. So through yoga, I was still doing freelance. So I first started my own businesses and got more into health and well-being. Then I left and started teaching yoga full time, then moving to Miami because I was so tired of the snow. So tired.
Right.
I'm like, I'm
Well,
done.
I love Boston in the spring now. Come on, I love it in the spring and a little
I
bit
love it in
early
the
summer,
spring.
spring. But
Summer. Well,
after
spring
that, you could have
done.
let me hit
So over
the
it.
so you started Live Free Warrior. Let's talk about it while we're here. I mean, women's mental health, men's mental health, the impact that we have now on social media and distress. We have more easier jobs, we would say, in our society because of technology, but it seems like the stress levels are amplified. And we can't always hang everything on COVID because we were having stress issues before COVID. I think it amplified it. And
Mhm.
so now that you went through that, the COVID thing, and you started your Live Free Warrior program, how do you see things now helping other people with stress that are in the industry that are around you? Because you see it when you're out there talking to folks. You see them having their
I do.
meltdowns over nothing, over minor things. But go ahead.
I do. And the Live Free started even when I was still way back in design world. So I was designing for a company and I was still sitting cross-legged in the chair. And I'm like, there's a separation, a cognitive dissonance right now because how I want to be living and how I'm physically living
Mhm.
in a cubicle and a desk. I'm like, So I started designing out like what my logo would look like and what my for yoga. But it was really Live Free was and is more of an empowered living feeling. That if I
Right.
want to create change, if I want to create a different life, I'm going to be the author, the writer, the director, the producer. Fully in charge of my character for who I want to be. And so even now to this day, I see a lot in the industry, classes, people I talk with, how much scarcity there is
Right.
now, even more, and how much fear, how much self-doubt, how many limiting beliefs to think,
Wow.
well, I'll I just want to do this. I'm like, I have massive dream. If you ask me what I want to be doing, I know exactly what characters I want to be playing, what kind of series, films, what that structure look like. Now, that doesn't mean I expect it to happen, but I like to have
Right.
some kind of trajectory and a high belief. I'm also a person who I want to aim super high. And
Right.
even if I get halfway there, at least I know I'm still aiming for something.
So you're speaking
And
into existence. So you're speaking it into
and I write
existence,
it
what you're trying to do, and write it. Go ahead.
and I write it. And so part of what I do too, and I'm glad I have this here, I feel by your own inner monologue for what you're
Right.
telling yourself is everything. No matter if you're an actor, no matter if you're
A
any
CEO, doesn't matter. Right.
any human. Yes, as long as you breathe and you have 2 feet. So I created my own planner called Be the Lead Planner, which on the inside, it does have how you're speaking to yourself every single day. It has a lineup of what's your priorities? How are you talking to yourself? What are your something that's going to stand in your way, your obstacles? So it's a lot of like actor talk and terminology, but it applies for everybody. And then you map out your day. So you're creating habits, routines, schedules, and getting things done. Now, there's something about physically putting your hand to the paper and writing it, or even if it's on the iPad and you're
Right.
writing it, it does something with that you connect with. And then you've now committed something to yourself. I feel by creating those habits, by creating that schedule and routine, you're more likely to stick to doing something than if you say, I'm going to be an actor today. Hey, what does that look like? I don't know. I'll see if an audition comes in. That to me is giving a lot of power away to what you can do than
Right.
seeing what you're capable of. So as far as like mental health and stress, it's really being honest with yourself as to what is your approach. How are you going about this? What are you doing 1% each day to get to be where you want to be? And do you know where you want to go?
Right.
And that's what, so I started building out a business for actors workshop, which we're going to be launching here first in LA and then take it international. That will also incorporate parts of the planner, but
Okay,
empowering.
so where do people get your planner? Is it on your website?
It's on the website and then
Is it
also
on
on
this one?
Amazon. Ta-da! And then if you go to the top banner, it says buy planner right there. You can click on that. That'll give you
Gotcha.
all the information. And then
There
from
we
there,
go.
you
There
can
we go.
also, it shows you how to use it. And then it's available right on Amazon.
I'm on point. See, I'm on point.
And then it's good for 1 quarter. So you really need for a year
Okay.
and you're set. But then this way too, and you can date the front just like you would if you got a script, it'll have the date on there so you know which one you're looking at.
So you're so
I
you're
feel
applying so you're applying what you've learned already in acting and your road through acting and through marketing. You've kind of combined two different worlds to try to help people find self-fulfillment and looking at the right, because what you're really asking people to do is to write their own history, because I think the struggle most people have is that they allow their history to be dictated by somebody else. And you said it before, societal views of what you should be or who you should be impact so many people. There's so many unhappy people working, and so they're making six figures, so they're making 500,000 a year. And funny thing about it is I'm around those people sometimes, and sometimes they're miserable. And everybody thinks
yeah.
because you have money, you're happy, you know?
And it's a low energy. You can feel it, especially I'm very empathic. So I can feel energy very, very
Right.
easily. And also scarcity is a very low energy. So yes, the combination of the business acumen that
Right.
I've had in the past, working in corporate, being an entrepreneur. I grew up in a world of small business. My family had their own business. So I've always had that mindset around
Right.
being smart with money and also having that business acumen and professionalism. And then what I started to do is apply also working smart
Right.
and creating goals, habit stacking, a lot of high performance. That's a lot of what focus on in our household, and a lot of the health and well-being. I mean, that just becomes a lifestyle. People say, "What's your cheat food?" And I'm like, I don't have a cheat food. I don't believe in cheat foods. I
You
believe in a
just live life.
lifestyle.
Wow. That's it. I'm getting ready
It's
for a
like,
bodybuilding competition, so I definitely understand what you're talking about. Is I'm gonna just push myself through the Tampa Pro this year. But I'm only gonna do it once, and I'm doing it because of bucket list check off. And my attitude. I got a lot of years behind me and less in front of me. So I was gonna ask you on one thing was you pushed yourself into being an actress and also looking at being a producer and a writer. So you've pretty much looked at, you want to be able to write some of your own material, create some of your own material. And why is that such a big drive? Because there's so many people that just fall into place and get in Groundhog Day and go, okay, I'm just going to do the part, get paid and go. But you're pushing the envelope in like all three different areas. And what's giving you that drive and what makes you want to have, do that?
and as the title says, I'm an author. I authored my life story book up until 2019. And there's so much. I really look forward to telling the tale more from 2019 to present day, whenever that day is that I decide to really sit down and write it, because there's always an evolution. And I feel as an actress, what adds a lot to I think it might have been Zoe Saldana. It was recently in an interview, or it might have been Angelina Jolie. What creates interesting actors that they choose for the characters are people who are interesting in real life.
Right.
And I feel all that I've been through in my life might not be extraordinary, but it allows me to be a very interesting human. So if I'm constantly curious about the world and I'm delving into those experiences, why travel is so important for me, reading and just meeting people like yourself,
Absolutely.
how
Absolutely. Travel.
important that is to then be able to be a more interesting person when I show up in the morning every day and on set to say, how am I bringing this character to life? As a writer, it's also a form of expression that I can then add more depth into the character because all of those stories start to build up. And as a producer, it was something that came naturally to me, being able to manage might not be the best word, but I'm going to put it there. Being able to manage multiple things at the same
Same
time
time.
and
Right.
having a clear vision, how I want to see something through, or being able to pick up, this is a really interesting story. How do we build this out? So I'm less in the executive producer interest, more in like the creative producer interest to say, how do we creatively put this project together and see this into fruition?
Right.
My passions are in writing and producing, but my career and heart are in acting for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And so, as you push forward in acting, and it's a competitive workforce, but you're in a competitive field, and I'm trying to, get an idea of how do you handle that when you go into that, environment to try to get that part.
Couple things that come to mind as you're sharing this. I remember a quote from Denzel Washington, and he said, if you hang around the barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut.
True statement.
Yeah. And the person you're in competition with is with yourself. And this goes back to what I was saying before. Are you doing your best every day to show up, to give a little bit, to give a lot? And there's a balance between that. Something I am working on is not overdoing and just trusting the
Yeah.
process. So I tend to be a doer and I love checklists. And I think that they're just going to like make me complete in my life. I
Oh,
work with
you're
this
OCD?
COD. How about that?
Okay, okay, I'll go with
CDO.
that. All right, I'll
I
go with that one.
feel CDO, because then it goes in alphabetical order. Get it? I feel there's one. How am I presenting myself? So, like the situation you were sharing with, you walk in, you see like it sounds like a cattle call. I've been on those too. I was recently in an interview it's for an agency, and I show up and there's all these faces like, this is not for me because I'm not meant to
Right,
be on this board with all these people. I want to be having a one-on-one conversation so that we're actually making a connection.
right.
I feel when I'm walking into a room or I'm doing a self tape or I'm meeting and casting or someone for the first time, there's an energy I'm bringing forth. And am I doing my absolute best to, and sometimes it's not even words. Sometimes it's just the subtlety of an action
Okay.
in silence, in space,
Wow.
because that can draw people in even more. So, how are you using that? If I walk into a room, I can just present an energy and it'll start to draw people in. And it's something that I learned and I'm still learning, of course, with speaking. And then as an actor, how, especially now that everything is self-tape. So it's,
Right.
you have to catch eyes very quickly. How is that
Oh,
coming
that's right. You
across?
you guys have to put a video camera out, tape yourself, then send them in now, right?
I just did right before we got on this one. Yes.
Oh yeah.
I walked out, my husband's like, your hair looks great. I was like, great, it's for the interview. And I just did another casting.
So check the block. You got it roll. So do you do any theater at all?
I haven't done theater. Wow, it's been a long time since I ever did theater, but I studied with a teacher here in LA who did a lot of theater, Susan Giosa, and a lot of the theater work. It helped so many ways with thinking three-dimensionally and
Okay.
continuously, because the difference with film, of course, then with theater, film, you get breaks, you get cuts, you're
Yeah.
doing one angle and then they're switching and doing another, or even if it's multicam, you're still breaking it by scenes. With theater, it is just da, 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 da,
Oh
da.
yeah.
And it's a beautiful challenge. I haven't done a lot, but most of what I love a camera. I love the intimacy of a camera, and I love how you use it as a tool to really express the emotion. And it's different with the eyes than it is that you're louder with theater, whereas something can be very, very subtle with film. And I think
True.
it's that intimacy that really draws me in to film and TV episodics more specifically. Um,
Well, I
it's
think
not that I
when you
wouldn't ever be open to. Go ahead.
right, yeah, but I think one thing is when you're doing theater, and I've done some stage stuff back in the day, but you can't capture the emotions in theater as much because you're doing voice, you're projecting your voice,
Oh,
the crowd's back. And so they're looking at the mostly more of the emotions that are happening on the stage, more of the movement. But as in theater, I think as in film, there's a subtle moments like in any movie. And if you got the right camera person, the right cinematography, and they capture that moment. And it's funny is like in some movies, they capture one movie. The movie could be kind of okay. They'll capture one moment in that movie. And I'll give you a good example. In A Few Good Men,
mm.
when Tom Cruise turns, looks at Demi Moore, and he has to make that decision. Do I go after Jessup or do I let him get off the stand? And she shook her head no. The other guy said no. And he turned around and he went after Jessup. I mean, it was just the power of seeing those moments in movies. And I watch A Wonderful Life every year for Christmas because
Beautiful.
such a powerful movie. So who's your favorite actor? And like who do you kind of, we all mimic somebody, because back in the day when I was growing up, I thought I was Shaft. So I thought I was Richard Roundtree, and I was trying to be cool with my little afro and black jacket on. But and when you were growing up, who did you kind of look towards as like influence? My man, Julia Andrews from The Sound of Music. I mean, like, I'm just messing with you.
So it's so funny. You just mentioned, and I had my coaching session this morning. I work with a shout out to Clara Chubbuck. I work with her privately. So we were working on um, different genres that fall underneath my brand of Live Free, where I'm like this spiritual wellness person, but then I'm
Right.
also this warrior and powerhouse. So I work within those two. And when I think of the people that I looked up to when I was young, it's so similar. You mentioned Tom Cruise. I loved Tom Cruise when I was younger so much. I have pictures of me going to Hollywood Boulevard and on Sunset, and I'm near his star on the Walk of Fame. Harrison
Oh
Ford
yeah.
was my other favorite, and
Boom.
Indiana Jones loved. I'm like, please, can we do a recast of a female version of a Indiana Jones?
Yeah,
And like,
Jones.
I would love to do something like that. on that similar token, I've always admired Angelina Jolie as an actress for the
Yes.
different depths that she can take something, and she's not afraid to go there and to try things. And now that all of her movies have been phenomenal, not all of her roles, she
She puts
can.
energy into them.
Ever since I saw her in, it was Hackers was the first movie that I saw her in.
Right,
And after that, her big breakout was Girl Interrupted. Phenomenal movie.
right.
Winona Ryder. And that movie, it was always, there were always characters that had this inner turmoil and this inner angst, which I resonated with so deeply in my teens. And then, I mean, even now, I'm like, give me a character that has some meat, even if it's a light vertical. I'm like, can we give her something? Like, let's give her something like her, I don't know, something with her dad, like give her daddy issues or something like that. And like, I don't know, like her coffee, just make something up that gives it a little depth. She's Nicole Kidman's another actress that I really, really have admired and followed. Far and away, I started watching more
That's
of
it.
her.
As soon as you said that, that just clicked in my head because that's actually like one of my most
Joseph.
favorite movies. Joseph.
Mm.
That's one of my most favorite movies. And
Playing the
sadly,
piano and everything. Yeah.
I they didn't just to me, they just didn't get the, because whatever. Tom didn't get the love because he had Samurai. He had multiple movies or Shogun. He had multiple movies that were right on point, where he should have been up for an Oscar until he did Maverick. And then Kidman, she's had some awesome movies. I've liked a lot of things she's been in, and Far and Away was they did a good job with that movie.
I think so too. That
Yeah,
was one of
so
my favorites.
so what's the right kind of movie for you? Because that's okay. So I'm gonna pick on you real quick before I get into something serious because I got to get this out of the way. All right, you're a vampire? Are you kidding me? Did you ever play vampire?
Yes,
Yes, I did.
Cassandra. I have the teeth still.
Yeah, so you've now I saw your short reel, when it was long, but I watched the whole thing. It was really good about the marriage thing situation. I thought that was done really well. I wish I had been able to watch the whole thing through without the breaks, but I thought that was really good. The storyline was good. The way you guys now, how did you guys get into that project where you end up marrying, your daughter gets you a husband and his mom gets him a wife? Who wrote that and how did you guys even get that? It was good. Sarah, it was actually good. I'm just being honest. I actually watched it.
Thank you. So it's fun with verticals because you get a chance to really use your imagination sometimes. And sometimes
Okay.
I've had some scripts that are really, really good. And then there's some parts where you question, you're like, how does this even really happen? The director, I loved her spirit. She's like, you're going to get a headache. Don't think too hard in this. Just go high level. And then what we started to do, and I worked on this with my acting coach as well, was how do we add depth? So there needs to be something deeper that is motivating me. Otherwise, I'll get caught in the questions. And yet it was incredibly well done with the whole crew, great cast. The importance of good story, yes, for sure. But then the way that we handled it and we maneuvered some of the words and phrasing helped give it more depth. So we
Did you make up stuff as you were going through the movie at
you have
times?
to. You have to. But
I would say,
even if it's an incredibly well written film, even if Christopher Nolan came to me with it, still as an actor, you are creating a backstory that you're going to be
right.
making something up a little bit because you need to bring that piece to the table. So I brought a lot to the table. We were like, well, what makes this realistic? At least to me to be believable. And it was just like this, how we just get this done. I've got my sunglasses on and we're married and fine. Okay, it's
Well, I
done.
was beating my head at the chapel when you guys were trying to decide whether y'all were going to get married or whatever. And at the very end of it, and I'll beat my head because he's like confused, and then you're like, he doesn't get. I was like, oh my God, could somebody just tell them too that they're married already? But it was good. So whoever wrote it, hey, kudos to that person. So shout out. Also, who was your other actor in that with you? the
Jeff Kopich.
you and Jeff did such an excellent job, I want to
Thank
say.
you.
And then I would look back at some of your YouTube stuff that you put out like 3-4 years ago, and you put out some serious content on your YouTube channel 3-4 years ago. So, and it kind of leads to the video I got there of your solo. What was it that had you driving to have this like because it was like you put out your diary on the internet a little bit. What was the thing that was making you kind of express in video what you were going through to everyone? It was like you're speaking to like not just me or other people that may be going through things during that time.
And thank you for doing your due diligence and so much research, because it gives a lot to talk on. The videos I feel that you're talking specifically on as well are the uncut series, where it really was like a verbal video diary, and they were serious subjects. They were about eating disorders, they were about alcohol, substance abuse,
Right.
relationships. I honestly was craving that depth because I felt like there was so much love. And what started to really bore me, because you'll see there's big gaps where I wasn't posting anything. Doing a
Right.
video of another yoga flow was like, ugh. And I did them because either there was sponsored content, or it was like, okay, it's easy. Let me just do this. But it wasn't fulfilling to me in any way. What was fulfilling was having the real conversations. What was fulfilling was bringing up subjects that people were probably scared to face, but someone needed to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And I loved bringing it to the table, even if 3 people watched it and they took something away from it. That's where that came from. And then the short film, Solo Persona, I didn't even intend to make that into a film. I went to, right after my divorce, I went to the same location where I was also technically married.
Well, let me
And
pause
for
you real
me,
quick. Let me pause you. Hey guys, I didn't mean to cut her off, but I did because I want to show a little bit of this, and then we're going to get back on this, if you don't mind, Sarah.
please.
The truth is, whether you choose it or not, a loss is a loss. You go around and around and around. It's the existential carousel. And around and around and around and around becomes a blur. Until one day you recognize you need to get off. If only to save your own life. It's a circle. Like every story, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I really didn't know how to feel. Happy to be free, sad, the death of a dream, or somewhere stuck.
All right. So it covers a very high amplitude of material in such a short window. And the reason why, because I can personally relate to being a divorcee. I can relate to loss of life of people in my life, and the beach, because I live here in Florida, and to me, and you talk about traveling. I travel a lot. I go to Europe because my oldest daughter lives in Passau, Germany. I love Europe, so I go and my go-to spot. I go to Austria, and I go to sit in the cathedrals in Vienna, and I can just sit in a pew. I don't care. 1,000 things can be going on around me, and I can just look at that ceiling and look at that artwork, and it just like takes me away from like whatever mankind's pushing on me, whatever that thunder. And that's kind of when you were going through that video, that's what resonated with me, is that the inner struggle, but the inner journey is they're both the same, because to get to the other side, you got to walk that path. And so go ahead and continue on what made you push this film out.
So to what you were just sharing is like walking through the path. For me, it was walking through the fire. I had to go back to the place where it started to close the loop. And I just filmed everything that was happening. I did at the time I was doing a lot of content for social media too. So like a lot of the shots are they're still shots because I would just screenshot them and do little shorts that would be for Instagram. But then I was looking at it and I'm like, it's very interesting. So something interesting happened. I threw the ring into the ocean and the thing washes back up on shore. I was like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I guess I got to bury it.
We're going to film this. So exactly. So I started filming, and when I reflected on all the content coming back, I'm like, wow, I went back to ground zero in this manner. And what did I learn from it? I'm like, I'm not going to be shut out from a place that I love in the world because of something that has happened in the past. And
Right.
to not be afraid of facing something, finding love again is very symbolic within all of that. And I knew I had to find love within myself and do the healing in order to find love with another person. If that happened, and if it didn't, and it ended up happening, yes, but it wasn't an expectation. I
Right.
knew that was within me because there was a reason that I was there and I was in that relationship. There was something to learn, something to take away. And that's what was so symbolic for me. And I knew I wasn't the only person out there who was having these kind of relationships with
Yeah.
what I considered high conflict individual. There's a lot of narcissistic behaviors, and I'm tentative to use the word because it's thrown around so much of like,
So,
oh, there's a
yes.
narcissist, there's a narcissist. It's like, whatever. It's like a high conflict person that we just butted heads. And of course, there's two to play. So there's something I was adding to the mix as well. And the more conversation
What?
around
Oh,
it,
what? You had accountability, a woman with accountability? I don't know. Because I pick on you on that because on podcasts, all you hear is, there's no accountability for women. Now, I'm glad that's refreshing to hear you frame that. And I didn't mean to cut you off, and I apologize for that. But it was refreshing to hear you say that, and I just wanted to say that. But go ahead.
I appreciate the light there. Because it takes two people. Even in no matter if you feel like you're in the right, you're playing a part. And
Yes.
if you haven't done something, you're just as much of a victim than if you are sitting there and taking it. So there was a part that I was playing, and it was something I needed to learn within self-worth, within speaking up, within being authentic, within developing boundaries. And that's when I decided I had had enough. So a lot of that living free was learning to really step into it. And what Solo Persona really embodies is I'm okay to be Solo Persona is Spanish for single person. Because every time I
Well,
would
I
sit
couldn't
down at a
pronounce it.
table,
I only speak German.
oh, you got me there. I know one word and it's not podcast friendly. It begins with an S.
I know that word.
Me too. And I know Guten Tag. I know that
Good.
one.
All right. That's all right. Good
Yeah,
day. All right. We can
that's
go
a
with
good
that
one.
one.
That's a good one. I learned that in Indiana Jones. I Solo persona means single person. So every time I would sit at the table on that trip, they would say, "Oh, solo persona," and I would say, "Yes." And it was just refreshing to me because I'd rather sit by myself and be alone than be sitting with somebody and feel lonely. And there's a big
Yeah.
distinction and difference between that. And that was the empowering piece because if I could be good by myself, then I would start to attract that other kind of energy.
The right energy.
And
Right.
exactly. And that's what you become the person that you actually want to attract into your life. Yeah.
So, what projects do you have? Okay, and I know
Mm.
there's NDAs out there and a bunch of stuff. So I know you were auditioning earlier. So one, what parts what do you have coming up there in the future that everybody can catch you on, or something that's out right now that you want people to go and jump on and check out?
Right now, the show you were mentioning with the verticals and episodics, those are now live. All the links are on my IMDb and also website, saraquiriconi.com. Coming up, wrapping up this month, 2 other movies with another one on the way. 2 are feature films
Cool.
and another casting for it's another role as a not a vampire necessarily, but she's feisty. I get
She's
cast as a
feisty.
lot of feisty ones, and I'm like,
Maybe it's just the look. It's just the look, maybe. And
My
are you
husband, my
originally
husband will say, he's like, "Yep, I know
are
that one."
you, are you originally Italian?
I'm an Italian Sagittarius from New England. Like, what do you
Oh
expect?
Lord. Oh Lord. Well, I'm an Aries, so I understand. My sister's a Sag. I understand. I had to grow up with one, so totally understand. Alpha, alpha, alpha. Just saying. All right. So if you had to give any advice to anybody young, that because I have a lot of followers on my Instagram, and I run this on Instagram after it runs on YouTube and stuff. And I have a lot of young actors and a lot of young people that follow me on Instagram. And a lot of them are in the acting and the arts. What advice would you give them about going into the industry?
You know, two thoughts. One, anybody who's a naysayer is just questioning their own beliefs. That's their own fears and doubts. They do not need to be yours.
True.
And the other is, yes, there's competition, but know your uniqueness. And it doesn't mean you cannot be part of the 1% who do thrive or 2% that do thrive.
Right.
It's just having that belief that you can be there. Recently I started looking, I shifted from like how many, instead of a general search, and it
Okay.
was, I used to do a general search of what the average actor, don't look at average. Don't Google average. Look at what the top performing actors are doing. How many
Hey.
feature films are they doing? What are they
Okay.
making on it? Who are they working with? How involved are they? I look at the top 1, 2%. I don't look
Mhm.
for the word average in any of my searches. So
Well, because you're hitting a key point. So when a person's out trying to grind and they're trying to get at the beginning of acting or anything, and I always tell young people, and I tell this to young men every time I speak or I do a keynote speak, is if you're at the age of 18 to like 35, you should minimum sleep, stay in shape, try to eat the best you can, and grind at your craft to get good at your craft, because you can always rest on the back end. I mean, and I can't stress that enough. So for yourself, how much grinding did you do on the front end that sometimes now you're seeing that hard work that went on the front end, like waiting tables and going to casting calls? How do you see yourself that when you were that person to the person you are now? What's your takeaway
I
from
had a
10 years
different,
ago?
yeah, and I had a different grind a little bit because I was doing more 10 years ago, I was doing more content creation
Okay.
and writing. So it was a little different, but I was learning more of that element and falling back in love again with who this character was in front of the camera. So it's a little different than I think to this scenario that you're sharing. However, I still feel it's equally important to know the professionalism of of artistry, because you'll think in like left and right brains, and
Right.
we hear this conversation where there's the artist and then there's the business person. It's like, well, what if you combine both of them together a little bit and know that it's just as much of a profession than any other, if you're bringing that mindset to the table. If you're not, then, well, you're feeding into the stereotype just as. And I used
Absolutely.
to say this too with and you mentioned this about people who are incredibly wealthy but very unhappy. And I would say the same thing. I've worked with people who are incredibly established and well off, and they have developed, yet their mental health suffers, their health suffers. They don't know how to take care of themselves. So what is the balance that you're bringing together in both of those? And the same thing that it goes for being an actor, artist, whatever artistry it falls under, and what kind of professionalism you're bringing to the table. How professional do you see yourself, and what are you doing to be a pro about it?
Oh, I love that, because I think so many people don't realize we call it a profession of arms. At some point, you have to be the professional of the things that you hold true to yourself. And so many
Mhm.
people I don't put the time. There's and I always say there's pillars that we all have to travel. You have to learn it, they get the knowledge. Then you have to exercise the knowledge you've learned. Then you got to go back and get some more knowledge to enhance yourself. And then that last pillar is you got to be able to execute from a strategic level everything that you've encompassed over 10 years or 5 years or 6 years. And then some people miss a couple pillars and then they go, oh, that person had it easy. No, that person decided to go get a master's, or that person decided to go to take an acting class at 12 o'clock at night because that's the only time they could take it. So those little things, I think. So with that being said, hey, I really appreciate you coming on today, but don't sign off because I got something to talk about after I stop it, of course. So I appreciate you coming on. It has been a great conversation. And look, normally I only go 20 minutes. We got it. We went in depth, and you know the thing is, yeah, that's it, because it's great content. And I can only say thanks so many times for you being here and laying out some great information for people. And guys out there, check out her website. Check out, follow her on the Instagram, and definitely check out all her short films and reels that are attached to her IMB, I think they call it. Make sure I got that right. And get it. And Sara, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Keep it rolling.
Thank you so much, Vince.